So, Puzzle Sigma, and I'm joined by, I don't want to mess up the pronunciation of this name here, but I'm joined by John over the phone momentarily. Let's get that call going. Hello?
Hey.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, is John okay? Or how do you say your last name?
Yeah. What, John, and you, Gabriel?
Yes, I am Gabriel.
Cool.
Thank you so much for agreeing to appear on the stream tonight.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to chat.
Excellent. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on being acknowledged as one of the top 20 games of this year's Jam.
Oh yeah, I honestly was not expecting that. I was very happy with the result, of course.
So I'm just checking here, and being number 20 out of 5,814 puts you in the top 0.0003 percentile. So that's pretty neat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sounds crazy.
Okay, so this was a three-person team, if I'm reading this correctly, by yourself and Booth and Beardy.
Yes, that's right. So obviously I didn't do everything myself, and I could not have done as well without my teammates. So this was very much a group effort.
Nice. All right. Well, am I playing the actual Jam version, or have you had a chance to publish a post-Jam version?
The Jam version, because we're working on a post-Jam build, but it's not ready yet.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll go ahead and get started with the questions then, and chat. If anyone has any questions they'd like to send my way, please post them as usual, and I will pass them along to our guest here. So, I've already got the game open, actually. Here we go. Does it have background? Yeah, it does have background music. I saw you've got a music SFX. So let me make sure that the audio is balanced for that. It always tends to be too loud for my stream setup. Here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead with play. Okay, I can boost a little bit more than that. Here we go. Okay. So, how did you decide what you're going to make for the Jam?
So, I brainstormed for a very long time, pretty much, and went through maybe 5 different ideas that sounded promising. And I finally picked this one after merging 2 previous ideas, and that idea was picked about 8 hours into the Jam.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely had a similar experience of spending a very long time trying to decide exactly what I was going to make. It didn't take 8 hours. It was closer to 3 hours for me.
Yeah, I think I took too much time, but I think I made up for it by the fact that the idea seems pretty simple to implement as far as sticking to a grid-based game with as few assets as possible. Stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, there were ways to be economic with the idea choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I hit restart on the previous level, not realizing that you were one of the few developers that actually had time to implement an undo feature.
Yeah. The undo actually was very simple to implement once you have this sort of grid based. Basically, if you build the underlying system in such a way that every move reproduces a new grid, like a 2D array, then the undo just involves you going back to the previous grid. So I think a couple people were like, hey, oh, nice undo, nice job on that. It's just more of a choice of how the system was built earlier on.
Nice. Yes, Razor Claw. It is, in fact, this game. I'm just realizing how the mechanics of this work and how I'm absolutely going to do a terrible job at playing it while trying to also listen to what you have to say. But yeah, I think it just goes to show that, it's funny because every single person that I said, hey, if you implement your game Well, okay. So to clarify a little, a lot of the other developers that I spoke to who were playing, who were making these kind of games. Oh, thank you so much for the follow.
Yeah. Of course.
So the people who were making these types of games, where you've got like the ability to move around on a grid and reposition elements on it, a surprising number of them implemented them using a physics system to like push their character between cells and then snap them into place afterwards. So my suggestion always was, why don't you use some sort of data structure like an array, or a dictionary or whatever makes sense for the nature of your game, and that way all you have to do is just hack cells and then queen the character's position between them, and like to me that just seems like the obvious way that you would do this sort of thing. And then, as you say, once you've implemented your game as a data structure, then it's absolutely trivial to just keep a list of those moves in memory and then just move like back between them. So
yeah,
I think
that's everything you said. I completely agree with. And I mean, like for example, the whole game worked with like placeholder art and that didn't have any lerping between different movements, and stuff like that. Yeah, and I didn't really think about the physics aspect of it at all. Really, just like moving between different grid states.
Okay, so when I started this next level here, you probably couldn't see the steam coming out of my ears, but I realized like this is my end. This is as far as we get on the stream, because I would rather be prioritizing the conversation that we're having than the math necessary to solve this. And I know it's not hard math. I know if I took some time to like even a moment just to puzzle this out in my brain, I probably could. But but yeah.
No, I believe in you.
I'll try. But yeah, I think it's just, to finish off the previous thought, like it's just a good example of how not only is there like a different way, like there are always different ways to solve a problem. And while on the one hand, I do say all the time, you can't argue with results. Like you what matters is that you're able to finish the game in the time that you have using the methodology exactly as Dr. Tronic's saying. If it works, it works. On the other hand, some solutions are going to net you easier wins than others, because if you go with the sort of like grid-based system, then, or as Logic's Indy here is saying, my undo function was basically saving the entire level after each move and reloading the previous one. Yeah, and you know what? Like if that works, no problem. You end up still creating something that is fundamentally operating on similar logic, but it's just, I don't know, takes up slightly more memory. Not really a big deal in today's day and age, where like, you'd be hard pressed to get a system with under 8 gigs of RAM. So I don't think it's I think it is absolutely possible to over optimize as a developer and put a lot of effort into trying to do things like, oh, if I do it this way, then I can each state of the level will only be like 12 bytes instead of 3 megabytes.
Right.
Like, does it even matter though? Like in the long scheme, I guess you can get
right.
way more states saved if your level state is only a couple kilobytes instead of a couple megabytes, and then that's like, how many states are you really even worried about saving? So
yeah, you definitely don't need to over optimize. I mean, especially with how fast most modern browsers and computers are, you can be pretty inefficient, especially during a jam. I think simpler solutions that are inefficient sometimes are the way to go.
Yeah.
And later down the road, when you experience issues with performance, that's the point when you can maybe decide, okay, may need to rewrite this, or this is the point at which I should address this.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that in general, that's solid advice to just say that get it working first, then worry about optimization. Like you want to test the feasibility of the idea before you worry about
right.
whether or not it's technically the most efficient you possibly could make it.
All right. Of course.
So, what was your development process like for this game?
The development process, this was a pretty quick jam, I tend to prefer longer jams, and especially with this jam, I mean, being on the Pacific Standard Time, it started at 11 a.m. on a weekday for me, and I didn't even get the full weekend to work on it, which kind of isn't the best block of time. So it was pretty rough towards the end, is what I would say. I think I got about 3 hours of sleep on the second night. And
Yes.
but as far as other things go, I'm just remembering like the rough periods. But I mean, overall, I've done a lot of jams. This is probably my 22nd jam or something like that. And I've worked with both of these people before on games. Beardy, the musician. Well, actually, Beardy, I reached out to him pretty late in the process, but he was still able to come up with sound effects and music, which is great. And Thoof, the artist and kind of co-designer as well. We've worked a bunch together on past game jams and stuff like that. So, you know, once I have an idea in my mind, I can sort of start to get the assets that might be needed ahead of time, and let people know what I might need.
I think that's definitely like the strength of working together with a familiar team. Like you know each other's workflows pretty well, and you know, most importantly, after doing that many jams yourself, you know your own workflow very well. You know what you can accomplish in a specific amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. And you definitely need to take into consideration the length of the jam pretty heavily, because like there are ideas that I would want to work on for a 48-hour jam. There are different kinds of ideas that I would cut as soon as they enter my head, even if they sound interesting, because for a 48-hour jam, it makes more sense to go for something simple that you can expand upon if you have time, something that you can get up and running quickly, and maybe explore a little more deeply, than some like big idea that only comes together at the last minute. I think I've been burned way too many times with that. So as far as like if we're combining idea and development process, I tend to try to go as simple as possible with the idea, because you always leave yourself room to take that idea further if you have time, and then usually you don't end up even having that much time, and then you're glad that you picked something simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's all part of managing your scope, and part of that is knowing what engine to work with. So I imagine you have a lot of experience with the Godot engine, which is why you worked with it to make this game.
Right. Yep. I think I've done the last maybe 15 games with Godot, and then before that it was Unity. And I'm such a big Godot fan. I will, vouch for Godot till the bitter end. I mean, I love it so much, and I actually even make tutorials on YouTube for Godot.
Nice.
So definitely know your tools well if you're doing
Absolutely.
a jam.
So I guess you would say Godot is your favorite engine. Is there any other engine that you develop in?
No, I originally used Unity for the first maybe 4 or 5 jams that I did. And when I found Godot, I realized that it suited me better coming from somebody with a web development background. Because this one particular web framework that I was already very familiar with, called React.js, had this sort of child component hierarchy that fit perfectly with Godot's sort of philosophy on how scenes are built and stuff like that. But I understand Unity is a very, powerful and great engine, especially for 3D.
Yeah, I guess the funny thing is I've seen a lot of 2D stuff made in Godot, and I know that Godot also has the ability to do 3D. Have you messed with that at all?
I personally haven't done any 3D. I haven't made any 3D games at all. It's just not the kind of game that I end up playing or really making. So that's pretty much the only reason. I just stick to 2D.
Yeah, I'm the same. I just know that some people make 3D stuff and then they switch to 2D stuff for the sake of a jam. It's a little faster to pump it out, but
right.
Yeah. So, do you have a useful shortcut or a clever hack in the Godot engine that you think would be useful for others to know?
Ooh, I have a lot of hacks. I don't know if I could effectively describe them all right now,
Sure.
or even remember all of them. But um, let me take a look at my games list and see if I could think of anything. Mm, so there's one like setting in Godot where you set your I don't know. Are you familiar with Godot engine at all, or?
No, I'm not particularly familiar with Godot. I've only what I've spoken to other people about having used it, so it's not something I've actually tinkered with
Okay,
myself.
okay. Okay, I was about to say something very, very specific to like Godot settings.
No, no, but that's
Um,
fine. Like, I think if that's what you think is going to be useful for other people to know, then other people who use Godot are
okay,
going to
okay.
appreciate that
So
tip. So go ahead.
yeah, so there's one. So a lot of people make pixel art games,
Hmm.
and sometimes the pixels can kind of they're kind of free moving, so they don't really snap to the grid slash like the pixel on the screen. So if you take a straight line and you rotate it 360 degrees,
Yeah.
um, depending on the setting that you set in Godot, that line will be a smooth line rotating, or it will snap to each pixel and kind of be jagged as it goes around.
Hmm.
And there's a setting in Godot where if you set your viewport to stretch,
Hmm.
it's very specific, but that will make your pixel art game have crunchy pixels. And I don't have it set on this game,
Hmm.
but I also have a bunch of like smooth fonts that aren't pixel fonts.
Yeah.
But that's like a good that's a tip for people if you're making a pixel art game and you want it to be more pixely and have each pixel snap, then there's a setting for that. But I think some people don't know about it.
Nice, yeah. 'Cause there are similar features to that in Game Maker. There's a really obvious thing that's like basically whether or not the engine is trying to blur your pixels or not. You can just turn it off. So that's a very obvious setting in Game Maker. And then similarly in Unity, they have like a pixel perfect camera component that you can enable for a similar effect.
I see.
And actually, I'm just going to quickly take the opportunity to mention that if you type !ref in the chat, then it's going to not bring up my Unity quick ref document. Here we go. Just open it myself. So if anyone is interested in using Unity in particular, I know that somewhere in there is the best practice guide for 2D sprite renderer. Here we go. I linked to the actual Unity documentation myself. I've taken some clips and taken some screen captures and linked some other assets here. But yeah, 104 pages worth of Unity development and C# solutions.
Oh wow. This seems like the real hack right here. That's cool.
All right. So we'll get the game back open here. I made it a little further than I was expecting to, but it's like almost through a process of trial and error, where it's not like I'm actually doing the math in my head. It's that I'm just seeing like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try a different movement combination. Okay, that worked.
Right.
That's how I'm. That's how
Yeah,
I'm kind of
just
like
trial and
stumbling
error.
forward. Yeah. Because I just cannot do the mental math right now. I've never been good at mental math, and trying like I could do it. It's relatively low numbers, but I feel like at the very least, because of the Z undo feature, it's easy
Mhm.
enough for me to do sort of trial and error it. So that's cool.
Right.
Was there anything else that you had that you wanted to recommend in terms of like hacks or shortcuts that you think would be useful for Godot?
Hmm. Uh, I guess I don't know. I think it takes a lot of I think it takes a couple games to get to wrap your head around like all the different uh, like nodes and out of the box kind of features that Godot has. Um, Godot has so many quality of life things that I frequently every game I find something new that Godot has out of the box that I had been doing myself or like hacking around, and I guess if you're using Godot, try to just go through all the different nodes, because there's going to be something that's super useful that you'll either need or that solves something that you were trying to do manually.
Nice.
Yeah, that's at least just from my experience from using Godot. It's super feature rich.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's a similar case in Unity as well. Like you can have, you can run into situations where, unfortunately, it's a little bit more disseminated into packages. There might be specific Unity packages, some of which are free, some of which are paid for, some of which are on GitHub, some of which are actually available in the package manager. It's really all over the place. Like, I would say that for that reason, Unity is particularly user unfriendly to get into right now. Like it was an unsustainable architecture before, and they're moving towards a better system, but it's just not quite there yet. So, yeah, makes it tough to recommend.
So as in like baseline features or nice to have features of the engine are hard to discover, or you might need to go to a third party to get them or something.
Yeah, I mean there are literally some of these packages that's like, we used to include more things in the engine and we're stripping that out in case you actually need it. That's good. On paper, absolutely. That sounds like it's a really good thing to have. The only problem is that, like, now if you're a developer and you want to make a 2D game, well, there's the 2D Essentials pack, which I've heard plenty of developers just say, how to find it. I just went onto GitHub and kept Googling until there it was eventually.
I see. I see. So you need to do some digging to find the like features of the kind of game that you want to make. Yeah,
exactly. Like there is a template that if you just launch Unity and you say like, hey, I want to make a come on. There we go. There is a template if you want to say, let's create a new. Okay. Well, there's like these 2D and 3D templates. I was looking for a new 2020 version. Yeah. Okay, same thing. Universal render pipeline, high definition render pipeline. Okay, and then here we go. There's a bunch of these other templates for like mobile 2D, VR, AR. So that really helps. But overall, you can start with the 2D essentials and you'll have your Sprite renderer. Good. You definitely want that integrated in your 2D game, but you might not have the 2D extras, which are going to have some like really useful features. So yeah.
I see.
Again, I just think it's a rough place for beginners to be in.
Right, because you'd have to know where to look. You'd have to know to even look for something that isn't there at the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
Pretty
sense.
Much. Okay.
Yeah, I think I think Godot is growing in popularity, so I'm hopeful that, and it is. I mean, you do have to know how to program, and it is a game engine, so it's obviously going to have a learning curve. But I think it's growing as a good starting point for people, especially if they're doing 2D games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got some comments here. Dragon is saying features are kind of all over the place, like 2D tile sets are in the engine, but most of it is in an obscure GitHub repo. Yeah, that's basically what I was mentioning. But yeah, Razorclaw, you're right. There are tons of easily accessible tutorials for simple things like movement and animation. The problem is, don't just watch any one tutorial and assume like, hey, cool, now I know how to do 2D movement. Basically, there are so many people creating these tutorials that one person might tell you, hey, here's how you do 2D movement. And they'll tell you to do, like, modify the object's transform position. And you absolutely should not do that. You should modify the object's 2D rigid body. And you should do it by, like, setting its velocity and not, like, setting its position absolutely. Because there are, it really depends on the kind of game you're trying to make. But if you're trying to make a platforming game and you're setting the rigid body's position manually, unless you really know what you're doing and you're basically creating your own physics system to overwrite the default one, that is not the way you should be doing it. So watch a couple tutorials and try to find a consensus on what is actually the best way to, like, accomplish the thing you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
And
think the same could go for any engine, right?
yeah, and then to top all that,
Mhm.
engine aside, as long as you are making stuff, it doesn't matter what engine you use, as long as you're comfortable in that engine.
Yep, yep, I completely agree. There's no need for like loyalty. It's like, oh, this is the best engine, and you should never use any other engine. It's like, no,
Yeah,
every
yeah,
engine,
yeah.
all engines are just tools, and you just need to think about like what tool is going to be the best solution, the best fit to the problem you're trying to solve.
Right. Yeah. I
All
mean,
right.
Hyperlight Drifter was made with Game Maker. Baba's U was made with, I think, like originally a drag and drop tool. So anyone can use anything.
Absolutely. So, if anyone has any questions they would like to ask John, now is the time to drop them in chat. Otherwise, we'll just continue on to our next question here, which is, I know that you mentioned you have a like post-jam version in the works, but are there any particular plans you have for this game going forward?
Yeah. So we've gotten some pretty good feedback on the game. And so at the very minimum, we're gonna do a post-jam build featuring maybe 20 to 25 levels. We've gotten some complaints about some of the levels, so we redid a lot of stuff. And yeah, and then we're gonna go from there. So if the post-jam build also looks promising, then who knows? We could potentially, do some kind of even bigger version after that. But that decision hasn't been made yet.
Nice. Yeah, I think
And
that's.
you
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
solved the puzzle, it looks like.
I did through just complete trial and error.
Nice.
Anyway, all I was gonna say is, what is the like other than the fact that it's I'm sure you're going to get a huge boost in the like through getting featured by Mark in the video. I hope that brings you a lot more feedback and a lot more interest in the project. Because yeah, I think this is a really really neat way to like turn a math game into something that you can like actually sort of puzzle about. I don't know, like I'm not phrasing this very well, but just a lot of games that rely on the themes of like, oh, it's about math and adding and subtracting, and it's like, well, okay, it's also not very fun. So I think this game's a really good example of something that is an interesting puzzle on top of like relying on math as a skill without going out of its way to say like, this game is here to teach you math and it may or may not be fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think it's because of all the spatial reasoning. It does have more of a puzzle feel, in my opinion, and the math is supposed to be pretty elementary, so it's used more as a tool or an object in the game than math itself, and that's how I probably want it to stay. Because once there's like exponents and decimals, I don't think it'll be very fun.
No, I mean, so what's the deal here? 1++? We all know that's 2.
Oh, right. Programmer over here. That's funny. No,
I
sorry to
couldn't resist
disappoint
the
you.
opportunity. All right. So there's a fair bit of conversation going on in the chat here. So let me just see. So guide for roguelites on the official site, which actually uses some pretty awful practices. Okay, yeah, going back to that conversation. It's like, oh my god, yeah, I remember that. That's one of the like basic Unity tutorials, and it's not good. There's definitely better ways to do it. Yeah, Unity's official tutorial uses awful practices.
Oh no.
If you hold the movement buttons, you can move in between the tiles, hitting stuff on both sides. Yeah. And that was made using this official Unity. Like, this tutorial has existed for so long, like since version 4 or 5 of the engine. They really just need to take it down. Like, this is, I don't know. You mentioned you used Unity a bit. Does this tutorial look familiar to you?
I've never seen this tutorial. No, I actually learned from a book.
Oh
But
wow.
it's funny to me that their own tutorial has like, or it's not even 5 stars. It's not even their best work.
Mhm.
Like people who don't even know the engine can still rate it not great.
Yeah. Oh my god, this is given a 4 out of 5 stars. That is not good. People should not be encouraged to use that tutorial.
That's just funny to me.
Yeah, I mean it's funny in a kind of depressing kind of way.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So, cool. Well, yeah, I'm glad that you're thinking about making some additions to this game, and I do look forward to maybe checking out a future version, a future build of it down the line. I hope that it gets the support that you guys need, and that yeah, project is just all around turns into a success. On top of the
Cool.
success that it already is, let's not undersell that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd be interested in sending you the game once it gets updated and seeing what you think.
Yeah, I would love. So, I guess in this specific version, are you thinking about in like I think I remember like level 8 was easier than level 7 in terms of the like it seemed to revolve around the same mechanics, but it was like an easier implementation of it.
Yeah. So basically, if right now on your screen, if you do 1 plus 3 plus 1,
Mm-hmm.
what do you expect the result to be?
1 plus 3 would be 4. Plus 1 would be 5.
You would think,
Mm.
but in this jam build, it's not. And so people are very confused as to why I'm doing maths incorrectly, and I agree with them. So the reason why it's not 5 is because I wanted to have puzzles that allowed L shapes, so you can do 1 plus 3 on one leg of it, and then 3 plus 1 on the other. And I wanted puzzles that allowed you to use the same block twice, and somehow that would lead to more puzzles. But of course, the con of that is that now people are confused. Like, why is 1 plus 3 plus 1 8? So, yeah. So basically, for the post-jam build, remove some confusing mechanics. And you did mention that one level is easier than the other. In general, I have a hard time with figuring out a good order of things. And like, when you introduce a mechanic, should that be an easy level, or is that boring? Stuff like that. So there's some playtesting that probably needs to be done.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I could suggest on that, if you're introducing a new mechanic in a level, don't worry about it being too easy if the user can just fly through it. Like,
Okay.
don't worry about adding out a level because you think, oh, it's so easy that if we're just introducing a new mechanic, then let's try to make it longer by making it include some of the stuff from previous levels. I'd say it's totally fine to just have a level that is super short, that just introduces a new mechanic, and that is clean and isolated. And if the user already understands it from before, then they can just fly through it or even skip it if they need to.
Okay. That's good advice. And then also, while I have you, what do you think is a good length of a level? Do you think like keeping each level under 10 minutes is a good idea, or is it fine to throw like a 15-minute challenge at a player?
I'd say that's really tough. You're going to know your own game better than I'm going to. Like I haven't even gotten to the end of it, and I'm not even allowing myself to fully grasp the mechanics of it. As I said, I've just been trial and erroring the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
And multitasking.
exactly, because so for that reason, I would say that the only thing that I would worry about is that the longer any individual puzzle can get, the more like possible moves you can make. Like the if you were to chart out the possible moves you could make, it just can really like spiral out of control really rapidly, and you can end up with a really large number of possible moves that you could make. And I don't know, for me, I personally like games the where it feels really snappy. Like I would much rather play a lot of difficult but short levels than really like crunch my brain against really difficult levels that take longer. But I also have to give that with the caveat that like I'm not crazy into puzzle games to begin with. And I think that the general pattern of among players who genuinely enjoy puzzle games is going to vary somewhat. I imagine there are some people who really love to like throw themselves at these deep and complex puzzles, and I think there are going to be other people who are like, no, I just want a more casual experience. So maybe from that perspective, you could think a bit about like what is the complexity that you're going for with this game? Are you going for the hardcore puzzler, or are you going for the kind of casual puzzler? And I hesitate to use those terms even, but I hope it illustrates what I mean.
Yes.
You know, because I think that it's totally fine to have levels that increase in complexity over time, rising in tandem with the player's understanding of the mechanics. Like naturally, you want to have levels that are more and more of a test of the player's ability as time goes on. So,
right. As for you as a non-hardcore puzzler, you would rather move through many levels frequently without getting caught up too much on a single level. Just for you personally.
For me personally, and what that's going to demand is a lot of unique mechanic introduction. Like it's not necessarily using every single mechanic to the absolute extreme that it could be, because it's kind of like I hesitate to use the term fire and forget, but it's a little bit more of like you know, those like stupidly fancy restaurants where you can go to and pay a lot of money to just get a tiny little nibble of a whole bunch of different tasty things. And like, you're not really sinking your teeth into the experience of any one of those things, but you have this kind of like high class experience that's being provided by just the sheer variety of what you're getting into. And you know, that being said, I think that I don't know, maybe a game like Portal 2 is a good example of what I just described. Like Portal 2 hits you with new mechanics like almost up until the last level of the game. Like you're introduced to the different types of gels and the excursion funnels and the laser redirection and like just so many different mechanics that are used to really interesting extents throughout the puzzles as you experience them. But there are you know, they left it up to the community to really abuse those mechanics and make custom levels and do all kinds of brain-bending stuff.
I should probably play that game.
Oh, okay. Well, if you haven't played Portal 2, I mean, it always gets a recommendation because it is just a solid puzzle game.
Yeah.
But I think it does illustrate Portal 2 is meant to be a mass market puzzle game. So from that perspective, it's not necessarily that hard. Like, I think if you asked any hardcore puzzler, they'd be like, Portal 2? I only had to think about those puzzles for, like, oh, you've made me use, like, 10% of my power. I don't know. And, you know, I had a good time with Portal 2, even though I'm not necessarily a puzzle game player, because it was just a very accessible puzzle to me. So I think that is the main question you're going to need to decide for yourself is what direction exactly do you want to take this game? Like within the genre of puzzle, do you want to push it in the more like hardcore direction, or do you want to push it in the more casual direction? And then what the decisions that you're going to be making that are going to align it with that vision one way or another are going to be different.
That was a great summary.
Well, I appreciate you saying so, because it's a really long way of me not giving you a definitive answer.
You were avoiding the answer.
This whole time. No, but it does come down to this idea of like this is this is your game, not mine, and I'm happy to be here as a sounding board and talk through these things because if I can do nothing else but point you in the direction of the right question to ask, even if it's up to you to actually figure out the answer, sometimes the difficulty is just coming up with that question.
Right, and that's a great question. Is what audience I want to appeal to?
Yeah, exactly. And that becomes a more important question to answer and a more important question. It's more important that that answer is wrecked down to a specific decimal. The more you plan on releasing this as a commercial project, and then the more money you decide to charge for it. Like, you don't have to be, you can be in the ballpark of a correct answer on that one if it's going to be a free game. You want to get it to within a few points of decimal accuracy if it's going to be a commercial project, and then you really want to know with like absolute certainty, or as close to absolute certain as you can be when you get to a game that is going to be like selling for any significant amount on platforms like Steam or, you know, virtual. I said virtual console. I mean the eShop, and you know, it's been a while. I haven't called it a virtual console in so long.
Yeah, I didn't even know what you meant. I was thinking of Virtual Boy.
Okay, you know the Wii Virtual Console that existed as a thing.
No.
No,
I don't know what
okay.
that is.
It's the wrong thing to be saying anyway, because it would have been the WiiWare platform, because Virtual Console was on the Wii, and that was like their way of delivering NES and N64 and Super NES games. You're making me feel old.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. Every generation, you know, you gotta. Everyone has to go through that feeling at some point. But anyway, you know, if I say eShop, like basically the platforms for which there are larger barriers to entry. That's what I mean.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you do end up creating a newer version of the game, and you like more feedback on it, I guess I have to play it off stream because if I actually want to give you proper feedback on the gameplay and not just these sort of general broad strokes, you know, I haven't been even touching the controls in a while. So just nudge the character around to remind people that it's alive.
Right. Yeah, I mean that sounds great. I mean, this design discussion was great too.
Excellent. I'm glad.
More feedback or anything like that. More
For
wisdom.
Sure. Well, you know, you can always consider sharing it with the community at large on the Discord and seeing what other feedback people have to give. But yeah, for now, I think we'll start to wrap things up. Chat, if you have any questions, I know there's been a very lively discussion about game programming and Baba Is You going on there, but I felt the need not necessarily to read that out loud because it seemed like people were talking amongst themselves. But if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask them. Otherwise, I'll just give you the opportunity if there's any other projects in the works or people you want to give a shout out to.
Sure. Shout out to Thoof and Beardy who worked on the project. Could not have done it without them. They did a fantastic job, and we're going to keep working on it for the post-jam builds. And yeah, I guess that's it. As far as projects, I guess you can follow me if you want to get updates about the game and play the post-jam build.
Mm.
And I have a Twitter, or you can follow me on itch. I'll post one of those in the chat.
Oh, go ahead and post both. I'll go ahead and grab your itch.io since I've got access to it, and you can post your Twitter.
Cool.
All right, Logic Cindy, amazing work. Congrats on winning. Definitely one of a kind game.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the conversation, and I look forward to trying this and future projects.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.